ride, let's ride. Let's kick the game proper to the other side. Let's ride, let's ride, let's ride. Let's kick the game proper on the other side.
Welcome to the second AIDS LifeCycle podcast. My name is Lisa Hatchadorian and I am a cyclist representative for AIDS LifeCycle. Episode 2, Positive. This episode is dedicated to the positive peddlers of AIDS LifeCycle, or Pos Peds for short. These participants are each just an incredible power of example to all who are involved with AIDS LifeCycle. These are individuals who ride for AIDS LifeCycle and who are also HIV positive themselves. Just like every other rider for AIDS LifeCycle, they have committed to riding 545 miles from San Francisco down to Los Angeles and fundraise at least $3,000 in order to help those who are HIV positive. So these individuals help others who are HIV positive to live healthier and better lives. And you'll hear in a moment that this is true in more ways than one. In this episode, you'll hear stories from and about these amazing people who ride for AIDS LifeCycle as positive peddlers. But first, coming up in just a few beats, a new segment, the news for AIDS LifeCycle 10. And now the news for AIDS LifeCycle 10 for the dates March 15th through March 31st, 2011. First, you should know that this podcast and these podcast episodes will be scheduled to go live on the 1st and 15th of each month until the ride. And now for the real news. We in the Southland have the honor of once again hosting the famous and wonderful AIDS LifeCycle Spring Expo, which is coming up at the end of this month on Sunday, March 27th. And the Spring Expo will have many clinics and workshops. We have a brand new community support who will be leading some classes. PD Fit LA and M11, who are fitness and stretch specialists, will be conducting 2 classes at the Spring Expo. And please keep in mind that these classes were designed specifically for AIDS LifeCycle riders. By the way, PD Fit LA and M11 are now offering free classes every Wednesday night in West Hollywood from 7 p.m. until 8. So if you are interested and in the neighborhood, you'll want to check that out on the AIDS LifeCycle calendar for more info and to RSVP. And speaking of the calendar, you know, the AIDS LifeCycle calendar is a great resource to find out what's happening around you locally. For instance, have you joined us for a training ride yet? We may just have a training ride down the street from you. Or maybe it's a few miles away, but the point is, these training rides are important in that they help you to prepare for the AIDS LifeCycle way of riding. Remember that we have 2,500 riders moving through dozens of cities. So we have these training rides there so that this way you can get used to moving through these cities and townships in concert with one another. The training rides are also a great way to get to know the AIDS LifeCycle community. So please, if you haven't joined us yet, check out the calendar, find a ride near you, and come ride with us. And now I'm going to do a little magic. Wait for it. I'm going to sort your AIDS LifeCycle email for you. I'm about to tell you what's really super important. First, any email that comes from us directly that is marked, "Let's get ready to ride," or for your roadies, "Let's get ready to roadie." Those are uber important, super duper. It has vital information. It's there for your health and well-being. So please open those, read those. Next email. Are you wondering what training rides are coming up this weekend? What online workshop is being offered this week? You'll find the answer to those questions in the emails marked upcoming training rides, workshops, and special events. And those emails come out every Tuesday. So look for it, open it, check it out. Ooh, by the way, the travel planner is now live on the website. It contains information about the host hotels in both cities, bike shipping, and it even has a packing list. So check that out on our website. The travel planner is at the following URL, and that's www.aids-life-on-the-event/travel-planner. That is all. So please check that out, and while you're there, have a look around the AIDS LifeCycle website, as we have a lot in place to get you ready for AIDS LifeCycle 10. And next on the AIDS LifeCycle 10 podcast, a story of Positive Images and Carlos Hernandez. Carlos Hernandez works for Positive Images, an empowerment group for HIV-positive men. He's also an HIV-positive peddler for AIDS LifeCycle. Carlos helped me out one day as I fielded a call from an HIV-positive man looking for services. This gentleman had mistakenly called the AIDS LifeCycle offices and got me. But here's Carlos to tell you what happened next.
I'm Carlos Hernandez, and I'm the Health Education Specialist for Positive Images in the Health Education and Prevention programs.
I had something rather unusual happen to me the other day. I was in the AIDS LifeCycle office, and a gentleman called up, and he basically said, if I remember correctly, I'm homeless, I'm bipolar. I've just gotten over pneumonia, and I just found out that I'm HIV positive. And after running around just a little bit, I was able to find you, who was sort of a savior, and basically fielded the call and directed him toward the services that he needed. But what exactly happened once I handed the call over to you? What happened from your perspective?
Okay. Well, once we had a conversation about what his needs were, and definitely homeless. Housing was a priority for him, and it's not something that's uncommon for us to. We get a couple of phone calls a week, and a lot of my clients that I deal with are dealing with housing issues, whether rent's too high, or they don't have a place to stay, or they're getting evicted because lack of payment of rent. So I'm dealing with those issues all the time, and I have a list of resources that I will refer them to. So I just kind of went down the list of what his needs were, and of course housing was number one. Then he talked about his bipolar, so the way I was able to kind of keep him connected to the clinic was to refer him to our mental services.
Are there ways to have these mental health services for people who cannot afford them?
We definitely do provide those services, especially this particular client. He's definitely covered, so we could definitely help him out. But even people that don't have any kind of insurance, as long as they go through the financial screening and they qualify, they're eligible for all our services, whether it's seeing a doctor, going to mental services, or legal services, or pharmacy. We have a wide range of services to provide them any kind of assistance. But again, with this particular client, we kind of talked to him a little bit more, and of course mental services was another issue, which again all goes back to housing leads these stressors. They get stressed out not having a stable home. So how can they even be thinking how they're just mentally, they're not stable. Also, they're not really adhering to their drugs because their priority is housing. They're not thinking of drugs or when to eat. Sometimes they don't even have a place to eat, so sometimes they can't even take their meds because of lack of food. So, I think housing is key to anybody getting their life back on track with taking meds, going to their appointments, being on a healthy diet, could at least have a place to cook. But if you're eating out every day, eating, fast food, it's just not going to be good for you, especially for your meds. especially with high fat context in some of the food that's served out there. It's just not good. It doesn't mix well with your meds.
Those are some very important points. Will you end up following up with this individual?
I did give him my phone number, email. I gave him a list of resources and names. And I basically, the way I left it was, call me if you need anything else. I'm here, this is my information, and invited him to come to the groups because I do an HIV positive support group.
What is that called?
The group that I run is called Positive Images, and it's an empowerment group for HIV positive men, different ages, we have different backgrounds. It's a total empowerment group where we get them to not just be the client, but now become that positive image to someone else. Because we provide trainings to become outreach workers with us, to come out to different venues and parades and festivals and talk about the program, their experience with the program, to also become co-facilitators so they can facilitate some of the groups and show the other guys, like, you can not just be the client, but now be that face of this program and encourage other men to live a healthy lifestyle. And then the third one is to become a mentor.
Does AIDS LifeCycle come into the picture when it comes to providing funding for any of these services?
Of course, absolutely. Are you kidding? I mean, the money they bring in, I've been doing AIDS LifeCycle now for the past 4 years. And I remember the first year I did it, brought in over $11 million. So I think it was 11.6 in 2008, which is amazing. The money that comes in, and then this year we sold out. We've reached the max. We have tons of writers, and the money that brings in provides needed services for our clients. Myself, I was a client of the Gay and Lesbian Center in 2000, not doing so well health-wise and financially, so I was able to access the services that have kept me alive, have kept me healthy, and now I'm able to work for the center and help other guys go through the same process I did.
Positive Images is just one of the many programs supported by AIDS LifeCycle and writers and donors like you. Next up, AIDS LifeCycle writer Jay Lennox will give us some fundraising tips to help us each reach our goals even in these tough economic times. After which, I will give you 3 golden tips that we share usually only in our fundraising workshops. Ooh, all that coming up in a few beats. And now, here's some fundraising advice from Jay.
My name is Jay Lennox.
And how many times have you done AIDS LifeCycle?
AIDS LifeCycle 9 was my first year, which is this past June. And I signed up to do ALC 10. And I've committed myself to doing the ride until there's a cure.
Really?
Yes.
So you just came on board just for a couple of years, and you are already super dedicated, it sounds like.
I am. It's a cause that's close to my heart. It's nice to see that there's a place where people can go with HIV and AIDS and be taken care of. That's a big thing, that they have that peace of mind. I know when I was diagnosed 3 years ago with HIV, I didn't have insurance, I didn't have money, and I needed the support of a similar cause. Now that I'm able to give back, that's one of the big reasons I'm doing it. So.
I know that you happen to have been a very high fundraiser last year. Isn't that true? Come on now, how much did you raise?
I raised a little bit over $10,000.
Wow, that's awesome. Any advice for the newbie that is looking at this year's fundraising saying, ooh, my friends, they may have lost their jobs. Do you have a bit of inspiration for them?
You really have to ask everybody. And when I first started fundraising last year, I was afraid to ask people for money. But that's a fear that you need to get over really quick. And I learned to get over it really quick. And I think it's the biggest fear that everybody has. A lot of friends that are people that I knew that were doing the ride are like, I can't ask anybody for money. I'm like, well, you're not going to make your minimum if you don't ask for the money. So, really ask everybody. I started off, I said I'd raise $5,000. I wanted to be a big shot and go over that $3,000 minimum. And so I signed up with the 5,000, and then once I started the fundraising, it just really took off. A lot of it was around tax time. People were generous with their tax money they got back and sent it in. So that's kind of a good time to ask, is when people are getting their taxes back. And then when I got close to I think I was about $4,500, I called my cycle rep, JR, and what do I do? And he said, raise it to 7,000. So I raised it to 8. And I got to 8 pretty quick after that. And then I said, you know what? I'm going to raise it to 10. I raised it to 10, and I got to the $10,000. It was actually a lot easier than I thought it would be. But again, this year it's been a little tough. Things are a little bit tougher. So it's important to get out there and ask everybody. There's people out there that want to donate. They just don't know where to donate. So you hit them, and it's one of the people donated $2,500 to me last year. He said he wanted to donate, wasn't really sure where to do it, and I hit him up, and he said, well, I have a budget to donate, and here it is, because nobody's asked me. So that's how I got to my $10,000. Another big thing too was Facebook. I would post before I'd go on a training ride, like when I got up at 5 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday. I'd post that I woke up and getting ready, getting dressed, eating for, to go on my training ride, and then put my link on there. And then I would go, when I got to the site where we would take off, I'd say that I'm taking off, here's my link. On our break, I would check my email. A few donations come in. That's the best feeling. And then post that we were on our break, the link again. I mean, it's all about posting that you're on these training rides to show people that you're serious. A lot of people didn't think I was serious because I'm kind of a bigger guy, and they thought, you can't do it. And I kind of didn't think I could either, but I did it, and people really saw that I was out there training, and so they're like, wow, he is doing it, so let's donate the money to him.
Thank you, Jay, for sharing those valuable tips. And now, as promised, and without further ado, 3 tips for fundraising. 1. Make a self-donation. This shows your friends and family that you are very serious about fundraising and riding in AIDS LifeCycle this year. Send out emails to each of your friends and family and ask them to consider matching your donation to yourself. Number 2. Send out social media messages like Facebook and Twitter at different times of the day and different times of the week. That's so that this way you make your message visible to as many people as possible, because different people will check their Twitter stream or Facebook at different times of the day during different times of the week. So you want to catch them all. So make sure that you vary and stagger when you post on Facebook and when you post on Twitter. Number 3, send thank you emails to everyone that donates to you. Think about how good that feels to receive a thank you for donating email. If you've ever received one, you know that it makes you feel really good and warm inside. So think about that feeling and think about the wording that would make you feel good about your donation. Then write that down, and then bing-a-bang-a, there's your email to write to other people. So save that out as a draft inside your participant center and have that ready to send to people. Then you can always alter it or make it more personal as you send out those emails. But do make sure that you send out those thank you emails, because ultimately what they are doing is helping you to help us to serve our clients. And that's what it's really all about, is helping out those who benefit from these vital life-saving services. Now, I have even better tips than those, but if you want to hear them, then you'll just have to come to a fundraising workshop. And we have those both online as webinars or at the AIDS LifeCycle offices, both in San Francisco and Los Angeles. Either way, check out the calendar for dates and details. Up next, my boss, Carrie Castillo, has been involved with AIDS LifeCycle for about 9 years. She's seen the effect that positive peddlers have had on the lives of many people. But this is the story she decided to share with us. Here now, Carrie.
I actually did have an experience on the event a couple of years ago where I worked with a very young cyclist who was just out of high school, entering his first year in college, and had tested HIV positive. And he was one of those challenging people that I had to work with because he lived in Berkeley and I lived here in LA. But he and I bonded immediately on the phone, and he had not told anyone, no one, of his HIV positive diagnosis. Not his family, not his friends. And he was very worried about it, but he was doing the AIDS ride. So when we met in person on orientation day, I walked him to the Pos Peds table to introduce him to those amazing men and women over there. And he immediately made friends, immediately was taken into the fold, and I saw him a few times during the week. And on day 6, he came running up to me in camp, and he was wearing a Positive Peddlers jersey, which clearly states in writing that he's HIV positive. And he told me that he was going to be wearing that as he rode in to closing ceremonies on day 7, which of course caused me a little concern because I knew his family was going to be there. And they didn't know yet that this young man had tested HIV positive. So I pulled him aside and we went to the dining tent for tea, and I asked him if he really thought that was the best way for his family to find out what he was going to tell them, by riding in with this group and, wearing this jersey. And he said he did. He said that with the Positive Peddlers, in that 7 days, he'd gained the confidence to be able to live his life openly as an HIV positive young man, and he wanted to tell his family, and he figured what better way than to do it with a smile on his face, riding in with these people that supported him. So I still had my doubts from ride in. I wasn't sure, how that would go. I needn't have worried, though, because I ran into he and his mother, his stepfather, his 2 sisters, and his grandmother at gear retrieval. And they were all standing, arms around each other, smiling, beaming. And so I figured everything went okay. And I just, he introduced me, and I asked his mom, I said, so what do you think of all of this? And she just turned, looked me straight in the eye, just eye to eye, and said, I've never been more proud of my son in my entire life as I am right now. And I guess he knew best, because he's back. He's a training ride leader for Northern California, and he's part of the Positive Peddlers group and has been now for 3 years. So, AIDS LifeCycle is the kind of place where things like that happen on a regular basis, and that's just one guy. That's just one story, that ended the way it did because this young man reached out to this family, and we were here for him.
I'd like to thank those who sat down for an interview with me this week. Carlos Hernandez of Positive Images, Jay Lennox, a Positive Peddler participant, and Carrie Castillo, a cyclist representative manager. I'd also like to thank Derek Shore and Aaron Copeland for sound podcast advice. Tune in for the 3rd episode of our podcast coming up on April 1st, entitled San Francisco. It's no April Fool's joke, I promise. It will be about San Francisco. Peace out.